The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The South Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainesburgh Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainesborough, or online at gainesboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainesborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to South Kesteven again, everybody. Now, I know out there I've got a couple of people who live in the Netherlands. I've got some Dutch viewers. I think there's only 2 or 3 of you. But you guys will be very interested in this particular episode because in this village, we're going to be talking a little bit about a certain town that you can find in the Netherlands called Arnhem. This is Caythorpe. Caythorpe, Katie's farm. Today on TVI we come to a village called Caythorpe. It's the second time we've met one with this name. The last time we were in Nottinghamshire, not far from the banks of the Trent. This one's a little different. For a start, we're nowhere near any major rivers. Caythorpe in Lincolnshire is close to the A17 and the border with North Kesteven, right at the northern edge of the area covered by South Kesteven. It's 9 miles away from Grantham, but Sleaford is actually nearer to the east. This village is best known for 2 things. First of all, this was the place during World War II where the soldiers that took place in Operation Market Garden were based. Market Garden was part of the Battle of Arnhem, and in September every year, the survivors from that conflict return to Caythorpe for RNM Weekend. It includes a church service, a gala, and a parade involving the veterans. Nothing now remains of the former paratrooper HQ, named Holy Cross House. A small housing estate stands on the site of that today. The other thing that Caythorpe is known for is to the east of the village, a long way away from the centre of civilization. On the parish boundary almost stands Caythorp Court. Originally built as a hunting lodge, it was used in the war as an auxiliary hospital before in 1946 being turned into the Kesteven Agricultural College, the only college of its type in southwest Lincolnshire. The school was closed in 2002, after which the building became a PGL activity centre, and that's how it remains today. Caythorpe has several other bits to discuss. It's not all about wartime history here, but it does dominate proceedings. Let's go. We start on Chapel Lane in the centre of Caythorpe village. The main landmarks here are clustered around one area bounded by the High Street to the west and the A607 to the east. On the High Street are both of Caythorpe's pubs. Kicking us off is the Wagon and Horses, a family-friendly country local with fabulous food, a large beer garden and real ales. As well as being a pub, the Wagon and Horses also doubles up these days as an Indian and Nepalese restaurant called Gurkha Square. Hopping across the road, we next find the Caythorpe and Ancaster Medical Practice. This serves a population of around 10,000 patients spread across approximately 50 local villages. Heading north, the building on the right next is the old post office. This was still going till a few years ago. It closed in 2016, but Caythorpe still has a post office today. I'll show you where later. Here's the other pub, the Red Lion, another 17th century country inn, although its history as a tavern dates back to the 15th century. Like the Wagon and Horses, the building was originally a house, and it's undergone a series of 19th and 20th century additions and alterations. Some original features do remain though, including a 2-light glazing bar casement window still in its 17th century moulded stone surround. It still has an inscribed stone plaque dated 1650. That has the initials TC on it, clearly belonging to the builder of the time. Today, the Red Lion is a popular pub and restaurant known for its quality food and drink, warm atmosphere and traditional charm. You can't ask for a lot more in a pub these days. Now here's a peculiar fact. Caythorpe used to have 2 pubs called the Red Lion. What makes that even more astounding is that they were right next door to each other. The one that you see here was the older of the 2. The other one, which stood next to it, was demolished in 1965. I guess this one was built to last. Okay, we're heading for the church next, and between here and there's a couple of things on the other side of the road. One of them is a hair salon, which is number 69 behind this van here. It's called Fox, and next door to that we have Charisma Community Care Services, whatever that may be. Now, speaking of care, at the end of the road, that building there is the other thing between here and the church. At the end of the high street is a building which, to my mind, looks like it could have been another pub at one time. If it was, it certainly isn't now. This is Caythorpe Residential Home at number 77, which can accommodate up to 14 people aged 65 or over in one adapted and extended building. At the junction stands the church, a 14th century and Grade 1 listed building dedicated to St Vincent of Saragossa. There are only 3 other churches in England that carry that dedication. It's one of the most peculiar churches we've ever seen too. That's because it has a wide double nave divided by geometric or early decorated piers. The central tower supports a crocketed spire rising to 156 feet, making this church one of the most recognisable in the area from a long distance. It used to be taller. The spire was restored by Gilbert Scott after being struck by lightning in 1859 and was rebuilt some 12 feet shorter than it was beforehand. Besides the double nave and the spire, the church includes a north aisle added in the 19th century, stained glass windows, and memorials to those who served in World War I and World War II. Monuments found here include some to members of the Hussey family dated 1698 and 1725, and over the tower arch are remains of paintings of the Last Judgment. St Vincent's also has a cross, last restored in 1906, and that's a scheduled monument. Now, the North Aisle is sometimes referred to as the RNM Aisle because this church has a strong wartime connection. During 1944, the 1st Airborne Signals Regiment was formed with approximately 450 men. The first major battle they became engaged in was Operation Market Garden. That saw them battle for the bridges of Arnhem in the Netherlands. The regiment was based in and around Caythorpe for training prior to the operation. The squadron was stationed in Caythorpe before the battle, and after the war the village became the spiritual home of the 216 Parachute Signal Squadron too. In the grounds there's a large boulder of Falkland Island stone with a memorial plaque dedicated to the airborne signallers. The Battle of Arnhem and the soldiers who fought in it arguably are the biggest things Caythorpe is known for. Survivors of the battle return to the village every September along with the 216 Signals Regiment for something called RNM Weekend. It involves a service held in St Vincent's Church which is followed by a gala and a parade through the village of the veterans and soldiers. This started almost immediately after the war when a few survivors of the operation started visiting Caythorpe on the anniversary of Arnhem to remember lost comrades. As time passed by, the event became officially recognised and the regiments hold this modern-day equivalent annually for both Arnhem and several other conflicts since. The soldiers were all based in and around the village in various properties. Some of them still stand, others don't. We'll see where a couple of them are, and indeed were, as we continue around the place. And of course, Caythorpe doesn't just remember the Arnhem soldiers, it remembers everybody from this village who fought in the 2 World Wars. And outside the church here, you can see we have the war memorial. It's a cross, and very nice it is too. It's right next to the Falklands stone, actually, so all the memorials are kind of together where they should be. Right, let's return to the walk. Next, we have a school to talk about. Back to the route. Outside the church on the other side of the road is a former school. This was built in 1839 and was the only school in the village until 1875. More on this later. Caythorpe has 2 grand mansions to speak of. One of them sits to the north of the church and once commanded a huge parkland area to the east. That would be Caythorpe Hall. A Grade 2 listed country house, these are its entrance gates and lodges. Caythorpe Hall was built in 1823 by William Parsons for Colonel George Hussey Pack. It replaced an older moated manor house. The Hussey family, who previously owned the old manor, have a long association with Caythorpe. Colonel George Hussey Pack, who served at the Battle of Waterloo, commissioned the building and later developed the Great Northern Railway. Built in the Regency style, Caythorpe Hall is a 2-storey stone mansion with a hip slate roof and a Roman-style Ionic portico. As for the parkland, that's been greatly reduced over the past 100 years. It occupied an area between the hall and the A607. Nicholas Pevsner once claimed that only the magnificent brick walls of the park remain today, although the park wall is not of brick, but instead of local stone. The next area is all to do with sports. In a small quadrilateral piece of land bounded to the east by the A607, we find the sports field anchored by Caythorpe Cricket Club. You may recall the immaculate cricket ground in Caythorpe's namesake Nottinghamshire village. Here in Lincolnshire, this club is known far less, it would seem. The ground has a pavilion occupied by the Caythorpe and Freeston Sports and Social Club, which runs a members' bar. The social club meets every month, and in effect it's a small enterprise whose profits are ploughed back into the playing field and the sports teams which use it. For example, in the past, the club has helped fund new children's play equipment and an annual fireworks display. Every month, the social club makes a payment of £250 to the playing field for the use of the bar in the pavilion. Next to pass on the edge of the playing field is Caythorpe's police office as we start to make our way south. The road we're on here is called Old Lincoln Road. This would have been the main north to south route through Caythorpe before the A607 was built. In 1900, this part of the village was little more than just a collection of fields, split into 2 bits by the line of the Old Lincoln Road. It's got a little more built up since then. Caythorpe hasn't seen a massive expansion, like some other villages of its size perhaps, but it's still a lot bigger than it was 100 years ago. So much so that these days it's absorbed another hamlet. We're on our way here to Freeston, once separated from Caythorpe by fields and lanes, but now they're like conjoined twins. Before we leave Caythorpe momentarily though, we still have some things to see as we rejoin the High Street, this time heading south. There's a lot of tree cover in this particular part of Caythorpe. That's good because it's providing me with a bit of shade at the moment. Temperature keeps going up and up and up. I'm going to be walking away from these trees next though, because at this point here, where we see some new houses, there's a footpath on the right hand side, and this is where we're going next. This will take us towards a school and a shop. Caythorpe used to have at least 2 other pubs alongside the 2 Red Lions and the Wagon and Horses. One of them was called the 8 Bells. That was on the corner of the High Street and Chapel Lane. It closed in 1998 and now has been converted into a private residence called the Old 8 Bells Inn. This next building did the same thing. This is the former Sun Inn at the other end of the High Street. This is now a house too, but it was lost a long time before the 8 Bells. It closed in 1912. Caythorpe Primary School is next. Education in Caythorpe can be traced back to at least 1839, when that small parish school near the church was built by a man called Mr. Pack. This would replace it. It originally was a public elementary school built in 1875 and enlarged in 1894 and 1900. It was designed to cater for 150 children. In 2017, after a change in its status and governance structure, this became a converter academy, evolving from the original Caythorpe Primary School. Call it what you want though, the school is described as a happy place where its children are cared for within a supportive and secure environment. Virtually next door is the village shop, a Spar store, which today is where the post office is based after moving from further up the High Street almost a decade ago. Over the road we have the village hall. Now this hasn't been a village hall for very long, it was converted into one just a few years ago. What was it beforehand then? Well, a few things. As you can probably tell, it's been here for quite a while. The stonework and architectural style shouts rather loudly 18th or 19th century at you. During World War II, this building was vitally important to the Arnhem soldiers. It served as a workshop for a blacksmith and a boot repairer, but also as a billet. Upstairs at the back there was a naffy room. The village hall wasn't the only building in this bit of Caythorpe that had a connection to wartime soldiers. Far from it, in fact. If you walk down the road a bit further, you'll see why. Just before we get to what that's all about, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you about the bus services that run through Caythorpe. I had a comment the other day which basically said, yeah, you don't talk about bus services anymore. Well, you know what? Just for you, whoever that was, I'll do it here in this episode. There's a bus stop right here, not far from the Spar shop, and here you can catch the number 1. Which goes to Lincoln via Fulbeck, Wellingham, Navenby, Boothby, Grafo, Colby, Harmston and Waddington. I do believe we have mentioned this service before. In all of those places, actually, apart from Fulbeck, we've definitely seen all of those villages. If you haven't seen them, you know where to find them. This is a small housing estate consisting of 3 streets, Lime Grove, Arnhem Drive and Holy Cross Gardens. Where this estate stands, there was a property called Holy Cross House. That's where the 216 Paratrooper Squadron were based. Now no longer standing, Holy Cross House was known to be haunted, not by anyone from the military, but instead by the mysterious Grey Lady. Now we're in Freeston, once little more than a small hamlet that flanked Caythorpe to the south. Today it's joined to it thanks to some later 20th century expansion. Freeston and Caythorpe have been linked together for admin purposes since 1974, when local government reorganisation changed the landscape of Britain as a whole. It's believed that the name Freeston is derived from the Frisians, who are known to have settled in Britain during the 5th and 6th centuries AD. However, their numbers were small when compared to the much larger Anglo-Saxon population. That said, they must have been pretty populous here. There are 2 Freestons in Lincolnshire, the other one is in Boston, not too far from where we are actually. You may also recall Frisby on the Reek in Leicestershire too, which also had connections to them. That's just over the border into Melton in the other direction. Freeston hasn't changed much since the 1900s. Although it has far more houses than it did in those days, the layout and feel of the place is the same. Old maps show there was once a cross sited somewhere close to the grandest house in the hamlet, Freeston House at the western end. The village is centred on a lovely green, giving it a focal point. Surrounding it are houses of varying dates, but it's easy to see what's been here the longest. Freeston was the home of Edmund Weaver, an 18th century astronomer and land agent. He's buried at St Vincent's Church in Caythorpe and has a memorial in the south chancel. Weaver was best known for the British telescope ephemerides, a posh word meaning astronomical tables. They are considered an important 18th century publication on the movement of planets. Self-taught, after writing the ephemerides, the antiquarian William Stukely described him as a very uncommon genius who'd made himself a master in astronomy. It was through association with Weaver that Stukely developed an interest in astronomy himself. Weaver's writing was also appreciated by Martin Folkes, the president of the Society of Antiquaries. Weaver supported a heliocentric view of the universe, opposing criticism of the accuracy of ephemerides formulated by Edmund Halley, the Astronomer Royal. Now, as a land surveyor, Weaver was also pretty famous too. In 1734, he printed proposals for making and publishing a survey of the county of Lincoln. The project was started but unfinished, with only a map and measurements of certain roads and bearings between places. The proposed survey of Lincolnshire was supposed to have included all wapentakes, churches, chapels, religious houses, chases and parks, notable houses, castles and nobility. It would have covered all parishes, settlements, waterways, bridges and roads, and would have been fully indexed, all carried out with contemporary technological equipment. Now, does that not sound like someone you might know? I couldn't help but think when reading about him that he was a bit like me. Alright, now to get back into Caythorpe, we're using a footpath which then becomes back lane. In times past, back lane was simply that, a back lane with nothing on it. It was the road that folks would use to access the rear of their properties, which all faced the high street, and it was little more than just an access track. It still sort of serves the same purpose, only now it serves the rear of the school, and there are some houses on it at the northern end. When we reach the top, we'll be at the chapel, which gives Chapel Lane, where we began, its name. See you there shortly. Always amazes me how fast a village can grow. Everything you just seen there on Back Lane just simply wasn't there 100 years ago. One thing that was certainly here 100 years ago though was this building here at the end of Back Lane. This is where it meets Chapel Lane, which you remember is the road we started on, and that there is the chapel in question. So here's the chapel, which was used by the Wesleyan Methodists when it was operational. It was opened in 1850 and closed in 1982, being subsequently converted into a shop. The building is made of stone and has a gabled roof. It has pointed segmental window arches with yellow brick jambs and decorative brick buttresses. This building is thought to have replaced an earlier chapel built in 1824, though the exact location of that former chapel is unknown. The rest of this walk sees us take in the residential areas to the north and west of the chapel as we form a loop around Gorse Hill Road and Waterloo Lane before rejoining Church Lane. Waterloo Lane gets its name thanks to Colonel Hussey Pack, named in honour of his service in the battle itself. These lanes are ancient, having been here for several centuries, but in much the same way as Back Lane, they were never built up to their modern extent. This is therefore a collection of 20th century housing now, with a handful of older, sporadically placed older buildings here and there. Let's wander around this to finish off. I'll see you back at the High Street. So we're not quite at the High Street here, we're still on the road that leads down towards the church. There's some nice houses in this particular part of Caythorpe. Check these out. These are all lovely. All around you actually. Brilliant, aren't they? Caythorpe's a great village. Absolutely love it for its architectural styles. I'm not a very good person when it comes to architecture, to be honest with you. That's more Nikki's forte, not mine, but I still can appreciate a decent building when I see one. Oh, speaking of decent buildings, look, it's the church again. So we have almost made it around Caythorpe. We're just going to turn onto the High Street now and then back onto Chapel Lane, and that will take us back to the car. However, we are not quite finished with Caythorpe yet, because earlier you'll remember I mentioned that Caythorpe has two grand mansions to talk about. We've talked a bit about Caythorpe Hall. What about Caythorp Court? To finish this episode off, we have two things to see that are east of the village. One of them is the former Keythorp railway station. Kthorp Station was built to serve the village of the same name. It was on the Grantham and Lincoln line and was built by the Great Northern Railway. The station closed for passengers in 1962, for goods in 1964, and the line closed completely in 1965 as part of the beaching cuts. The site now houses a recycling centre for household waste. The line, which opened in 1867, ran through land which was owned by the GNR chairman, George Hussey Pack. Pack's land was the first in southwest Lincolnshire to be mined for iron ore. Open cast workings were either side of the line and used narrow gauge links to railheads on the line itself. Lastly, we have Kthorp Court, a Grade 2 listed former hunting lodge situated about 1 mile to the east of the village, almost on the parish boundary. It was built in 1901 for Edgar Lubbock, a brewer and a banker, to the designs of Sir Reginald Blomfield. The site was originally occupied by a farm which was owned by the church. In 1899, Lubbock instructed Blomfield to design a hunting lodge in the grounds of the farm. It was called Mansion House to start with, but by 1904 it had acquired the name Caythorp Court. Lubbock died in 1907, and following his death the house was acquired by Elmer Yerborough, who controlled the Blackburn-based Thwaites Brewery. Yerborough owned several properties, and Caythorp Court was the smallest, being referred to by her as the Cottage. During her ownership, the gardens were redesigned by Percy Kane. During World War I, the property was used as an auxiliary military hospital, and in World War II it became the headquarters for the 1st Airborne Division Signal Squadron. Yerborough never saw her house again, dying in December 1946, but her will requested that the estate should be sold to become an agricultural education establishment. The will also mentioned that the main building should be maintained as near as possible in their original condition. That same year, her first wish became a reality. Caythorp Court became the Kesteven Agricultural College. In the 1960s, student halls of residence were built in the grounds of the original house. The new buildings were named after local towns: Stamford, Grantham, Lincoln and Sleaford. Later, another complex consisting of Boston, Brownlow, Bourne and Louth were built too. In 1980, it amalgamated with two other agricultural colleges, Holbeach and Riceholme. At that point, it became the Lincolnshire College of Agriculture and Horticulture. In 1994, it became part of the Leicester-based De Montfort University. The site was closed in 2002 and sold to property developers who proposed to use it to house asylum seekers. But that never happened. In December 2002, the Caythorpe Action Group was formed to fight any proposal to use the site as an asylum centre, and they won their battle. So then, Caythorp Court was acquired by PGL. They now operate it as a centre for adventure-based holidays for adults and children. PGL spent an initial £2 million on the centre, building a man-made lake, an orienteering course and archery facilities, with an all-weather pitch, a theatre and a bar, and even a rifle range too. Caythorp Court would be used as a residential activity centre for school groups during term time and as a centre for family activity breaks in school holidays. The site has also been used in other ways too. In 2013 it was used as a strategic evacuation centre by Lincolnshire County Council in response to the East Coast tidal surge that December. Caythorp Court has annually supported the RNM Memorial Weekend too, providing accommodation to visiting veterans of the 216 Airborne Signals Regiment and their families. And that's been Caythorpe, probably one of the lesser known villages in Lincolnshire, all things considered, but one that comes alive every September to celebrate its wartime heroes. Tomorrow we're going deeper into South Kesteven as we take on not just one village, but 3 of them, all within the same parish. Join me for more very soon. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.